All right. Hello and welcome to the Alpha Software Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software. Today we're going to be doing a quick demo on things, all things online and offline. But I'm also here to take questions. And at the end, I've got a few questions for you. I've been basically compiling notes of upcoming webinars, and I wanted to see which ones resonated the most with you. And I'm willing to take suggestions as well. Also, it looks like someone has actually written in reminding me that we were going to do a webinar on adding security to an existing project. So I'd be happy to tackle that one. Maybe we can do that as soon as next week. Just a quick thing before we get started. I just want to make sure that you can hear my voice. You can see my mouse move around on the screen. Awesome. Thank you very much for letting me know. So we are ready to get going. If you do have questions, type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. You can also send them to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. So let's go ahead and play right from this slide. Slideshow. All right. So today we're going to be taking a look at online and offline, and I've gotten questions about this a fair amount, and I meant to do a webinar on it, and today's the webinar. It's not a very long one because it's actually not that complicated a subject. So let's see, let me explain to you what I mean by that. We have a product called Alpha Transform, which I know I've talked about many times on these webinars, and it is a product that is a software as a service product. It's used by quality managers, field service people, and other people who need to collect data out on the field, often in cases where there is no signal. So in Transform, if you take a look up here at the top, you will see that when you do not have a signal, there is no button for you to upload your form, but when you do have a signal, there is a button. So that appears and disappears automatically depending on whether or not you have an internet connection. So that's a great means of letting people know that they're not able to do something or they are able to do something, or if they've got connection or don't have connection. But you can make a really nice interface or user experience for people if you have that information and you display it properly. Now, I did not personally write Alpha Transform, so I don't know what feature they use to do it, but I know if I were to write it, the feature I would use is a cool one that's built right into the UX, and I'm going to show that to you now. So in the UX, there is a client-side event called on-connection change. And with on-connection change, when you change from an offline state to an online state or vice versa, this script fires, and or a script that you write can be fired. In the example they gave you here, which I'm going to show you live in a minute, it checks to see whether or not the device has gone offline, and if it is offline, it goes ahead and it hides the synchronization button. So it knows that you can't push the button to synchronize back up onto the server. You'll have to wait till you get a connection. When it is restored, the button comes back. So how do we do that? Well, that is actually pretty cool. We just set it up here in the on-connection change of the event. Now, there are some other functions, JavaScript functions that are out there. So before I get ahead of myself, this is what I did. I said on connection change, if online, that's my Boolean variable that lets me know if I'm online. If it's true, do this. If it's not true, do that. So set the synchronization button to true, do display it, or set it to false, don't display it. Pretty simple. All right. There are some other functions though as well. For example, there is the dialog get online status, which allows you to check to see whether or not in your own JavaScript to see whether or not something is happening. You might do that. You may have some other buttons, other functionality in your UX in which you want to check for this without necessarily waiting to see, waiting for that event to fire, the online-offline event. But the easiest way I'm going to say for your applications is really to stick to this on-connection change thing. What's really nice, though, when you are testing this is that you can test it live, even in your own browser, by simulating an online and offline status. And that's because we've got a cool little JavaScript function here called set simulated online status. So you can actually assign a JavaScript, run a JavaScript method that tells the device that it is offline. It doesn't tell everything on the device it's offline, just your browser, right? So everything else is going to work. But you'll be able to test your Alpha Anywhere application. That's sort of the point there. It's got 3 modes. You can turn it off, you can turn it on, or if you leave it blank, it will check to see whether or not it naturally has a signal or not and sets it appropriately. So that's like a way of sort of clearing what you've done when you have finished. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to show you is another function. And this one is actually a little bit more useful in a way than the one which checks to see if the connection is available. This checks to see if a server is available. So instead of checking to see whether or not your browser is connected to the internet, it checks to see whether or not it can connect to your Alpha Anywhere server by performing a very small AJAX callback and getting back a success message from that. With that, you know that you both have an internet connection and the server is up. So that's a much more reliable test to know whether or not you're up online. So this is a good thing for you to have here. You'd find it under server is available method if you do a search in our documentation. So we're just going to do a live demo. This is going to be really simple here today. I'll pop over here to my remote desktop machine. And I have created a UX. The UX has got a sync button, which doesn't really do anything. I put it there just to either hide it or display it. And I have 2 buttons, one called offline, one called online. When I press the offline button, I've used that set simulated online status JavaScript function I showed you before to set the status to off. And with on, I just set the status to on, just as you'd expect. And then in the events, the client-side events, we have that on connection string change server-side event, which basically hides or displays the button. So I'm going to go ahead into live preview. You know, I've never tested this in working preview. I don't know whether or not it works in that. I've just tested it live. But if I say, okay, I'm going to go offline now, you'll notice that the button has disappeared. If I say online, the button has come back. And of course, you could also use this to display an icon that shows you a connected or not connected icon, depending on what the status was of that event. So that is, okay. Is there any way to check on the quality of the connection? There would be a couple ways of checking on the quality of connection. I haven't actually scoped that out for today's webinar, but yes, you can check to see how fast that connection is. There's a couple ways of doing it. There's a way of doing it in JavaScript, but there's also, I believe, a way of doing it in Alpha Anywhere. Let me get that for you for next time, but thank you for asking that question. It's a good one. Let's see what else we've got here. Is there a graceful method? Okay, so that looks like it for questions for online, offline. So this might be a very short webinar, but there's another section I want to get to where I want to ask you a few questions about what webinars you would like to see. Now let me take a look at this first question. Is there a graceful method using AA to get the redirect URL for something like curl-s URL? What the URL is for that? I'm not sure I understand that question. If you send it into guides, I will take a look at it and get you an answer for it. Okay, so let's pop back over to my slideshow here. We'll just hang out here, and I'm just going to pause that for a second, and I want to open up my notes. Okay, so the first thing is, let's see if you guys can figure out how to raise your hands using the GoToWebinar control panel, because I would like to use that. If you can find the raise your hands thing and you'd like to participate, yep, click the raise your hands button, and I will see how many people can raise their hands right now. Let me take a look at the dashboard. Let me find where folks are. So the chat window. If you find that button, raise your hand. Where is it? I can't find it online. I can hang on a second. All right. Hands raised, 14 out of 23. All right, that's great. I think I can, okay. So if you could put your hands down, we're gonna do another, first question we're gonna have. Thanks very much. So show of hands. Who would like to see a webinar? Let me grab my notes again. On OCR, optical character recognition, and how to use a plugin for that to capture data. So show of hands, would that be of interest to you? Okay. It looks like about half of you. That's a pretty good number. All right. So, okay, hands down if you don't mind. Using SQLite. Is anyone interested in using SQLite as a backend service? Wow, about the same as OCR. That's interesting. Okay, hands down if you don't mind. Next up would be building applications in Cordova, like building applications using, like what is the build process to get that going so I can build an application that I can load directly onto a device. One is not quite as popular, but still somewhat popular. Great. Okay, hands down, another one, federated authentication. So this is using things like Google Login, OAuth, and things like that to make it easy for your users to log into your web applications. Does anyone have questions with that or find it would be interesting to do a session on that as well? And that one is pretty popular. Okay, hands down, just a few more. Appreciate your feedback on all of this. The next one is secure S3 buckets, especially in lists. In other words, how to set up your bucket so that it requires an authorization token in order to say, see the images in it, as opposed to leaving your buckets open, and basically how to configure your S3 buckets in general. Any interest on that one? Oh, we see a lot of interest on that one. Okay, wonderful, cool, thanks. And the last one has to do with charting. How many would like to see some more work with charts, client-side charts, Google Charts, or whatever, getting charts into your application? Are people struggling with that? Would they like to see some examples? Oh, and we have a winner. Apparently, chart. Everyone wants to. Well, 3/4 of everyone wants to see charting. That's huge. Wonderful. Okay, now for some open-ended questions. Are there any other types of webinars that you would like to see us covered? One person brought up the idea of how do I add security to to an existing application that doesn't yet have the security framework set up. So I think that that's going to be a good one too. We'll put that onto the list. Someone asked they can raise their hand 2 times through SQL. Well, I guess so. Yeah, that would be fine. And then someone said, can we cheat with Alpha Launch? That's a really good question. I was going to ask that Alpha Launch question separately. Is anyone interested in a review again of Alpha Launch, which is the real easy way to get your application up because we've already put the apps in the store for you? Would you like information and help in getting that set up? Interesting. We have more people interested in doing it that way, it looks like, than actually doing it themselves with Cordova. I don't blame them. It's easier. Okay, cool. Wonderful. And then there's another 2 hands up for configuring S3 buckets and getting them to work. Okay, those are great. Let's see what else we get here. Someone said, if you're running this check, oh, this is a good question. So we do have a question again about online, offline, and that is, if I'm going to run that check that checks to see whether or not there is a server running in the background, am I going to get charged compute units in Alpha Cloud? The answer is yeah, but not very much. It's going to be really, really tiny amounts of data that go through. So it'd be pretty insignificant at this point. I cannot imagine it would affect much. I guess if you had like a bazillion users logged in all at the same time, but even then, I think the payload is very, very small. So I don't think as a percentage it would be a big deal. Another one would like, oh, this is a good one. Let me write this down. JSON forms review. Anyone else interested in a review on how to do JSON forms? Show of hands. And that could go along with client-side templating and calculations. Looks good. All right, excellent. I'll have my work cut out for me. This is great. And how to set up a list box with the same ease as a grid. Oh, I see. So list boxes for people who are used to grids. For grid users. Does anyone else here find lists to be a bit of a challenge setting them up? And would they like to see a demo just in general of getting them set up? See, show of hands. Oh, there's fair interest. Okay, very nice. Let's see what else we've got. Reducing clouds. This is a great one. Reducing costs on Alpha Cloud. What actions add to the cost? Does logging add to it or things like that? That is a really good question. So Alpha Cloud, in other words, how do you get the most throughput for your buck with Alpha Cloud? Probably some of them are also going to apply to the standard server and to the IIS server as well. But let me see that one. Costs. Great question. All right. And then someone has a very specific question. Oh, working with JSON forms, how to get the row ID in a repeating container? More specifically, how to get the value of a text box in a repeating container. Oh, okay, I see. So repeating containers in general, I think, would be a good thing to go over. Cool, awesome. Well, that's it. I'm sorry that I was doing most of the question asking today, but I really appreciate all your feedback. I want to make sure that we get, XML reports. XML reports. Okay, you mean data that's from XML that you want to do reporting on? Is that the question there, just for the person who submitted that? Yeah, okay, good, excellent. Wonderful. Well, hey, thanks very much. If anything else strikes your fancy, send it over to guides, GUIDES at alphasoftware.com. And then someone says, can I announce what the lesson is before the webinar starts? I will try to do that. Sometimes I've got a couple that I'm working on and I realize that one's going to be better than the other, like the day before, the morning of. But if I can know what it is, I will send out a little announcement reminding you that the webinar is on and what the topic will be. So that is a good question. Thank you. I see how to create XML files from databases. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Hey, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Thanks for giving me all this feedback. And I look forward to seeing you next week at our next Alpha Software demo and Q&A webcast. And hopefully we'll take in some of these ideas and put them together for you. Show you what you do. Until then, if you've got questions, send them to guides, GUIDES at alphasoftware.com. Thank you again. Take care. Bye-bye.